here's to Hellbender. So we started making Hellbender a long time ago. 2006, I think, was the first vintage. But it's not a vintage dated wine, and it's not really a sort of Solera process. What is it? Actually, Helby Banks, what would you call this? Just an intriguing year after year.
Well, it's a good question. It's really tasty, which is the first thing that I think needs to be said. I think it's almost like a laminated port in style. I don't know if that makes any sense, but it's almost like a combination of multiple vintages of a port style red wine made from the Noire grape at this point. It does have other grapes in it from back in the day, but at this point it's Noire is the lead grape, which is a really peppery hybrid with some nice black fruit character. And we make it as we would like to with. And after it's made, it gets pressed off and added to the tank of Hellbender. And then we bottle some off and add a new vintage in. And it's a really interesting layered wine as a result of that. It's not just like a simple straight ahead, sweet and alcohol sort of thing that I think a lot of people expect. There's a lot of nuance and a lot of savory characteristics from how old the material is still in the wine. Mm-hmm. Megs, is that a fair? How do you think of Hellbender when we're working with it?
I think you've got a pretty good assessment of it. I mean, for me, it's also just working with it. It does have a very good aspect of like history of Red Newt, because as we were saying, like I think one of the like components that is still part of the blend is from 2006, which was far before I was involved with anything. So it is a little bit of working with history, and then kind of adding a little bit of what you do yourself to it every year as well. And it's, again, like you were right in that I think of it as being like tasty first and foremost, but really something different that you can do with a hybrid grape from the Finger Lakes that you might not see similar expressions of from many other people.
Yeah, hybrid grapes from the Finger Lakes, hybrid reds in particular, are a kind of a quizzical group. There are a few that have been grown over the years. People who are familiar with the region might remember or still see varieties like Baco Noir and Marechal Foch and
Chancellor.
What's that?
Chancellor.
Chancellor, that's Versailles, a little bit here in the Finger Lakes, and varieties like that. The Noire that Kelby mentioned was also a hybrid. In fact, the first ones we mentioned were all bred in France many years ago, and kind of in response to the phylloxera situation there over a century ago. And the Noire was bred here. So it's in the Finger Lakes. It's really dark, black raspberry characters. So it's really, it lends itself well to this style. And over the years, decades ago, I have always pondered this idea of port, because of course this isn't port because we're here, and port is from Portugal. But the idea of grapes are deeply colored and highly flavored and relatively high in acid, creating wine that we can balance with residual sugar and alcohol to make something that ages in an elegant way. And that's kind of that we now call Hellbender.
Who named this wine? And where did the name Hellbender come from?
We named this wine. I might have named it. Who knows? It was a little while ago. But the wines here at Red Newt, they're kind of newt themed. I mean, the winery itself is named after the eastern red-spotted newt. The blue newt white a blue, with a newt that's not, you only occasionally see her in the Finger Lakes, but you see it a little bit outside the Finger Lakes quite a bit. And we had a salamander white for a while, which was named after the Amblystygian maculatum. It's a black salamander with yellow spots, yellow spotted salamander. I think it's a common name. So the Hellbender, well, we wanted to have a name of a salamander that would kind of befitted its character. Bold, big, a little bit fierce. So we settled on the Hellbender. When it's the Hellbender is the largest amphibian in North America. It grows to 24 inches long. It's a salamander, and it's used to be quite plentiful. You'll still see them, but not as much. And down in the sort of clear running waters of the Susquehanna and Allegheny River, so it's sort of big rippling clear waters. And archaeological evidence indicates that the native peoples of this area use these huge salamanders as part of their food source. So, and they're quite voracious predators. They feed on small critters, but also things like crayfish and small fish. They're exquisitely ugly, but have cute, beady little eyes. So anyway, that fits well enough. So we called the wine the Hellbender, or as my dad used to say, you say it, Hellbender.
Yeah, so I mean, the primary grape that composes Hellbender at this point, like we were saying earlier, is Noré, which is much like the Niagara, a very different beast to work with as a grape when it comes into the winery. It's one of the slip skins, so the skin will just come right off, and then the entirety of the grape lives inside of it. And stays pretty intact. So as Dave originally pointed out, now I can never unsee that when we're processing the fruit. As it's going through the must hose into the press, it just looks like a bunch of kind of crazy eyes moving along, staring at you as they go. It's just a very different thing altogether. And as far as winemaking goes, we do treat it very similar to how we treat most of our red fermentations. We run it a little bit hotter. And we do still inoculate the Noré versus doing kind of spontaneous fermentations, all the other reds. But it gets all the same love and attention that everybody else gets down there as far as, treating our bins with love before getting pressed off and then added to what we lovingly call the Tower of Hell, which is a very large, skinny tank that houses the stairs.
It is a little terrifying to skim the top of, so the name suits it in multiple forms, I suppose. And I think the Noiré that goes into this is a really tasty red wine when we're done working with it before it goes into the Hellbender mix. And I think that shows and why the wine is so tasty as a finished product as well, right? Because it's not like lesser things are added to it. Like the Noiré is made to be in this wine. And there were times when I almost went to sneak bottles of Noiré home because it's just such a gulpable red table wine, in a different iteration of its life prior to Hellbender.
Very cool.
Yeah. So, the Hellbender. Are you going to have this with dinner tonight, Rebecca?
Well, I would have this with dessert, and I would have it with dark chocolates, nuts, any kind of dark fruit, maybe like a dark flourless chocolate torte with some cherries.
How about you, Heather? How are you going to enjoy the Hellbender this evening?
Normally, I would say I'll just eat it with a bunch of blue cheese, but I ate all the blue cheese. So that requires some brownies made with Hellbender, a Hellbender blueberry coulis that I make, and you just kind of drizzle one over the top, and then you make a Hellbender shake with a little bit of vanilla ice cream and Hellbender, and you put them together with some fresh berries. Pretty simple, and it's really delicious.
How about you, Kelby? What's in your future with Hellbender?
I don't know about tonight, but as a fortified wine, it lasts for quite a while. And I love using Hellbender for a punch called Smoking Bishop, which, along with having a great name, is also what I bring out on a little kettle when we pick iced wine. If you come out at 2 in the morning to pick ice wine with us, when that happens, you'll get some Smoking Bishop. It's an old Victorian punch that Charles Dickens was quite fond of, and actually they found quite a bit of it made and bottled by him in his cellar after he passed away. But it's basically port, which was in slang term called bishop at the time, and then heated with red wine and spices and some cognac, usually flamed with cognac, hence the smoking part. Some citrus, and it's just really satisfying. I know it sounds like antithetical in the heat that we're dealing with right now, but in the long winters of the Finger Lakes, it's a perfect thing to have.
That sounds delicious.
Really good.
Yeah. How about you, Megs?
I'm going very, very basic with this, and I'm not apologizing about that. I've got some wood that I need to burn in our kind of burn pit out back, tree branches and whatnot. And I haven't been camping yet this year, so I'm actually going to get stuff to make s'mores. And I actually really love Hellbender with s'mores because the evenings are a little bit cooler, and I certainly don't want to sit by the fire and sip a beer and have chocolate because that just doesn't work for me. So really just Hellbender and some s'mores and sitting by the fire late into the evening is probably what's going to happen for me this weekend.
Where's your campsite?
I was like, oh, right at the house, come by. After you're done with the lake, you can stop by, warm up by the fire, have some Hellbender, and then you're all set.
That sounds great. Yeah. I think I just remembered as everyone was talking that I think there's a small little container in my refrigerator with a couple of these really dark chocolate intense flourless chocolate brownies that Terry made the other day, brought over to us. And I think they're in my future with a little bit of dark berry coulis and just a little bit of whipped cream on top. I think that's where I'm going with this. All right. Well, I guess that's it. And thanks everybody for sharing some Hellbender. Thank you out there for joining us. And cheers until next time. Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers.